I don't think there's ever been a game quite as tailor-made to my tastes as Nth Circle's new mystery thriller, Of the Devil. From just an outside glance, it's clear that it has been influenced by a number of my favorite series and creators, which alone is enough to pique my curiosity, but of course that alone wouldn't be enough to completely earn my favor. Of the Devil not only needed to understand what made its influences work in the first place, but it also needed to forge its own identity, carving out its own place within the genre. It's tough, I'm sure, but sometimes you need to take a gamble when trying to bring something new to the table. Thankfully, I believe Nth Circle is more than well aware of this, and what they've crafted within this first episode alone is very interesting. Of the Devil stars Morgan, a defense lawyer living in the nigh dystopian vision of 2086, one which actually feels scarily possible given the current state of the world. Just about everything and everyone is connected to the state, meaning there is little to no privacy anymore. Still, crime has seen a significant downturn in correlation to this. Illegal acts are almost always caught via some sort of monitoring device, so while crimes do happen, things like murder, assault, or mugging are open and shut cases. In a world like this, defense lawyers often have odd stacks against them. But thankfully, that's just how Morgan likes it. Now, there's currently a free demo for episode 0, which is an essential prologue to the story, so it's recommended that you play it first before starting episode 1. This case sees Morgan hired to defend a man accused of being the Heartbreak Killer, a serial murderer who shoots victims with a single shot through the heart. This introductory chapter is short, but it does wonders introducing you to the world, the core mechanics, themes, and Morgan herself. Episode 1 follows this up with a murder plot surrounding androids and mega corporations as one of Morgan's close friends is killed, leaving behind a peculiar, extremely advanced android known as Sarah. Morgan herself might just be one of the strongest aspects of the entire game. From episode 0 alone, so many layers are revealed, but even then it feels like we've only scratched the surface of her psyche. The contrast between her inner monologue and what she actually chooses to say is very compelling, as it's clear that she's someone with a more complex web of morals than your average protagonist. She is flawed, intimidating, sometimes even frightening, but she is still immensely rootable and likable thanks to her wit, her ability to twist things in her favor, and because she is just so intense. Even when trapped in a corner, it feels like she's somehow able to turn things around to suit her own agenda, and seeing her smugly do so is just incredibly entertaining and cathartic. All the other characters are interesting and engaging in their own way too. Morgan's courtroom opposition, Emma Rockford, sits outside of the archetype you would expect for an antagonist, much like how Morgan sits outside what you'd expect for a protagonist. And Sarah has her qualities you'd expect from an assistant role, but she really comes into her own, coming off as capable and confident alongside being naive and kind. She's a great foil for someone as cutthroat as Morgan, and I can't wait to see how their relationship develops in further episodes. Of the Devil's other strengths come from its world building, which is exceptionally detailed while also playing it smart. Morgan explains that knowledge is power, so you're encouraged to learn as much as you can in order to gain in-game credits, which in turn will help you later on the trial segments of the game. This means you're incentivized to pore over the news articles the game leaves scattered around you, and lean into the search terms that are flagged with purple text, which amusingly are treated as if they're actually using an in-game search, with related searches and even content walls adding extra flavor. Of the Devil creates a world that is very much cyberpunk in nature, but it manages to feel more relevant in the current culture climate than most contemporary examples. It's not exactly subtle in its critiques, but I don't think it attempts to be, and it still handles its themes in a way that feels smart and thought-provoking. It makes it so you have no choice but to engage with the moral quandaries it highlights and considers them in more critical manner. I love that it manages to do all this with a sense of humor too. The comedy is very dry, but it works for the setting, the tone, and the nature of the themes that the game handles. And of course, Of the Devil manages to replicate all the thrilling courtroom drama of its inspirations while adding some twists of its own, in both its gameplay and its narrative. Regarding the latter, the tension feels much tighter given the state of the world the game is set in. Everything is really piled against you, and it can feel like you have quite the mountain to climb to make even a small headway. Morgan is a character that grasps and clenches every advantage in her palm and doesn't let go, but she does it so confidently, and that same confidence filled me once I knew what had to be done to put the trial forward. While the gameplay isn't actually the star of the show here, certain design choices leave a stronger impression than you might expect. As mentioned before, taking the time to examine your surroundings in turn gives you credits, which act as your health during the courtroom sections as well as your overall score for the end of the episode's summary. Certain moments also incentivize you for paying proper attention to articles, quizzing you to ensure you come to the right conclusion after reading them, and providing a reward in turn. Of the Devil doesn't punish you for overlooking details, but it will reward you if you take the time to turn over every stone. The courtroom gameplay is heavily themed around gambling, with poker plays and blackjack being aesthetically linked to submitting evidence, questioning witnesses, and cross-examination. It's mostly an aesthetic, and most sections are handled in the same way that its inspirations do, just with the additional flavor. Still, you can also introduce a bit of extra risk into the mix, where certain elements of the trial allow you to increase or decrease the bet. At minimum, you'll earn or lose a small amount of credits depending on how you perform, but you can increase what's at stake if you feel like taking the risk. If you end up being wrong, the losses can be pretty great, but if you're correct in your deductions, the rewards are just so sweet. A better score at the end of the chapter will unlock new bonus scenarios and concept art, and you'll also get cash to spend on in-game phone charms and cases, which does add a bit of customization to the menu. Ultimately though, the best part about the mechanic is the cathartic feeling of reaping the rewards from a big risk. Compared to most other games of its kind, Of the Devil is a little more exciting because it doesn't give you as many chances to mess up, although it is a little more forgiving than it initially sets up. For the record, I played on the high roller difficulty for my playthrough. This option limits you to one save file and disables loading a save during a trial. This mode also increases the rewards you get through betting, which could increase the satisfaction. However, while loading is disabled during trials and save scumming is discouraged, you can still exit to the menu and load whatever save you last made, regardless of whether you're in the middle of a trial. I think this high roller difficulty is an excellent addition and a great choice if you're more adept to these sorts of games, but I actually wish it was a little more unforgiving. Perhaps I'm just a glutton for punishment, but that's one thing I wish they could have leaned into more. The art direction in Of the Devil is striking. Character designs are bold and eccentric, but not in the way that feels as odd with the gritty, noir-esque tone of the story. Even with the inspiration, there's a clear effort that's been made here to carve out a style of its own. Scenery is bathed in neon and looks futuristic, but in a way that is believable and grounded. The UIs and menus themselves are all wonderful too, well constructed and artistic without being difficult to read or parse through. The soundtrack as well feels like it draws from its inspiration, yet adds an almost eerie, almost horror-esque sound to the game. The trials are filled with heart-pounding beats, increasing the exhilaration of the risk-reward gameplay, while investigations ramp up the tension with tones that can be haunting. Those tracks in particular stay with you long after the game is finished, which is a nice way to say the soundtrack is good. Of the Devil Episode 1 is an incredibly compelling start, all things considered. It doesn't miss a single mark in my eyes, even when balancing its weightier or topical subjects. With its moral compelling protagonist, heart-pounding courtroom gameplay, and unique aesthetic, it matches its inspirations and even outpaces them in some ways. With this being just the first of 5 episodes, time will tell if this gamble will pay off completely, but they're taking all the right steps towards victory. For now, Of the Devil is setting itself up for a winning streak, and I can't wait to see if it'll actually pull it off. Needless to say, I'm eagerly awaiting Episode 2. Noisy Pixel is giving Of the Devil Episode 1 a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by your supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.